Growth changes how people see you in ways that are often subtle at first, but eventually become undeniable. When you begin to evolve, whether mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or professionally, you are no longer the same version of yourself that people once understood and became comfortable with. Human relationships are often built on patterns, expectations, and familiarity. People grow used to who you were, how you behaved, what you tolerated, and even the level at which you operated. The moment you begin to break those patterns, it disrupts the image they had of you. This is not always because they wish you harm, but because your growth introduces uncertainty into a space that once felt predictable. You may start setting boundaries where you once stayed silent, speaking with clarity where you once hesitated, or aiming higher where you once settled. These changes force others to reassess who you are, and not everyone is prepared or willing to make that adjustment. As you grow, your priorities shift. What once mattered to you may no longer hold the same weight. Conversations that once excited you may now feel shallow. Environments that once felt comfortable may now feel limiting, and relationships that once felt aligned may now feel strained. This shift is natural, but it can be misunderstood by others. They may perceive your growth as distance, arrogance, or even rejection. In reality, you are simply aligning yourself with a higher version of who you are becoming. However, because people often interpret change through their own emotional lens, your evolution may feel like a personal loss to them. They might not say it openly, but internally they are grappling with the fact that they can no longer relate to you in the same way. Growth also changes the energy you carry. When you become more disciplined, focused, and intentional, it shows in your actions, your decisions, and even your presence. This new energy can be inspiring to some, but intimidating to others. People who were comfortable around your old self may now feel uneasy because your growth highlights areas in their own lives where they feel stagnant. Without saying a word, your progress becomes a mirror reflecting what they have not yet addressed within themselves. This can create discomfort, and rather than confronting that discomfort, some may choose to distance themselves or respond negatively. It is easier for them to label you as a Ching who acknowledge their own resistance to growth. Another important aspect is that growth often comes with increased self-respect. You begin to recognize your worth more clearly, and as a result, you become less tolerant of behaviors that once seemed acceptable. This shift can alter the dynamics of your relationships significantly. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries may find your growth inconvenient. They may feel like they are losing control, access, or influence over you. This doesn't mean your growth is wrong. It simply means the dynamic is no longer one-sided. True relationships will adapt and respect your evolution, but others may resist because they were built on an older version of you that no longer exists. It's also worth understanding that growth is not always visible in obvious ways. Sometimes it's internal, your mindset, your resilience, your ability to handle situations with patience rather than impulse. But even internal growth eventually reflects externally. The way you respond to challenges, the way you communicate, and the choices you make all begin to shift. People notice these changes, even if they cannot fully articulate them. And when they do, their perception of you changes accordingly. Some will admire you, some will feel inspired, but others may feel disconnected because they no longer recognize the version of you they once knew. Not everyone benefits from your evolution. And this is a difficult truth to accept because we naturally want the people around us to grow with us. We want our success to be shared, our progress to be celebrated, and our journey to be supported. But growth is not always convenient for others. In fact, it can disrupt the roles that people have assigned to you in their lives. If someone is used to you being the one who always agrees, always gives, always sacrifices, your growth may challenge that expectation. When you begin to prioritize yourself, set limits, or pursue your own goals, it can feel to them like a loss of something they once had. This doesn't necessarily make them bad people, but it does reveal that their connection to you may have been based on what you provided rather than who you are becoming. There are also situations where your growth creates a gap in ambition, mindset, or lifestyle. As you strive for better, you may find yourself moving in a direction that others are not ready or willing to follow. This can create a natural separation. It's not always dramatic or confrontational, Sometimes it's quiet and gradual. Conversations become less frequent, common interests fade, and the connection slowly weakens. This is not a failure growth. It is a reflection of different paths unfolding. Not everyone is meant to walk the same journey, and sometimes growth reveals that more clearly than anything else. In some cases, people may consciously or unconsciously resist your growth because it challenges their own sense of identity. If they have always seen themselves as more accomplished, more knowledgeable, or more stable than you, your progress may disrupt that belief. This can lead to subtle forms of resistance, minimizing your achievements, offering unsolicited criticism, or showing a lack of enthusiasm for your success. These reactions are often rooted in insecurity rather than genuine concern. Your growth forces them to confront the possibility that they are not where they thought they were, and instead of addressing that internally, they project it outward. It's important to recognize that not everyone who doesn't support your growth is intentionally trying to hold you back. Some people simply lack the awareness or emotional capacity to understand what you are going through. Growth requires a certain level of self-reflection and openness, and not everyone has developed that yet. They may genuinely care about you, but struggle to adapt to the changes they see. This is why empathy is important, but it should not come at the cost of your progress. You can understand someone's limitations without allowing those limitations to define your path. At the same time, there are people who will celebrate your growth wholeheartedly. These are the individuals who are secure in themselves, who are inspired rather than threatened by your progress, and who genuinely want to see you succeed. They may not always be the ones you expected, and they may not always have been there from the beginning, but their support will feel different. It will be consistent, sincere, and free from hidden agendas. As you grow, your circle may become smaller, but it will also become more aligned with who you are becoming. Accepting that not everyone benefits from your evolution requires a shift in mindset. Instead of seeking validation from everyone around you, you begin to focus on alignment. You start asking yourself whether your relationships support your growth or hinder it. You become more intentional about who you allow into your space, understanding that your environment plays a significant role in your progress. This doesn't mean cutting people off impulsively, but it does mean being honest about what each connection brings into your life. Growth is ultimately a personal journey. While it is natural to want others to be part of it, the responsibility to continue lies with you. There will be moments when the lack of support feels discouraging, when the distance from others feels heavy, and when the changes in your relationships feel overwhelming. But these moments are part of the process. They are not signs that you should stop growing. They are signs that you are moving beyond what once held you in place. The discomfort is temporary, but the transformation is lasting. Understanding that not everyone benefits from your evolution also frees you from unnecessary guilt. You are not responsible for maintaining a version of yourself that keeps others comfortable at the expense of your own growth. You are not obligated to stay the same just so others don't have to adjust. Your journey is your own, and the changes you make are a reflection of your desire to become better, stronger, and more aligned with your purpose. Those who are meant to be part of that journey will find a way to grow alongside you or support you from where they are. Those who are not will naturally fall away, making space for new connections that align with your path. In the end, growth is not just about reaching new heights. It is also about letting go of what no longer fits. This includes outdated habits, limiting beliefs, and sometimes even certain relationships. While this can be painful, it is also necessary. Holding on to everything and everyone from your past can prevent you from fully stepping into your future. By accepting that not everyone will be happy with your growth and that not everyone will benefit from it, you allow yourself the freedom to continue evolving without hesitation. Some people preferred the old you, not necessarily because that version of you was better, but because it was more convenient, predictable, and easier for them to understand. The old version of you may have been more accommodating, more available, less assertive, or less aware of your own worth. That version fit neatly into the expectations others had created, often without resistance. When you begin to grow, you start breaking out of that mode. You question things you once accepted. You speak up where you once stayed quiet. And you begin to choose yourself in situations where you once chose others at your own expense. This shift can feel uncomfortable to people who were used to the previous dynamic because it requires them to adjust in ways they may not be willing to. The truth is, people don't always realize how much they benefit from the version of you that lacks boundaries. When you were always available, they never had to consider your time. When you rarely said no, they didn't have to respect your limits. When you avoided confrontation, they didn't have to take accountability for their actions. That version of you made things easier for them, even if it made things harder for you. So when you begin to grow into someone who values their time, energy, and self-respect, it disrupts that comfort. Suddenly, they have to meet a standard that didn't exist before. They have to consider your feelings, respect your boundaries, and accept that they no longer have the same level of access or control. For some, this adjustment feels like a loss rather than a healthy evolution. There is also an emotional attachment people form to who you used to be. That version of you is tied to shared memories, familiar behaviors, and a sense of stability in the relationship. When you change, it can feel to them like they are losing a part of that connection. Even if your growth is positive, it still represents a shift, and not everyone handles change well. Some may hold on to the past version of you, expecting you to return to it, or subtly encouraging behaviors that align with who you used to be. They might remind you of how you used to be so easygoing, or how things were better before, not realizing that what they are really expressing is discomfort with your growth. At times, the preference for the old you can come from a place of insecurity. When you are operating at a lower level, whether in confidence, ambition, or awareness, others may have felt more secure in comparison. Your growth changes that dynamic. It raises your standards, expands your vision, and shifts your position in ways that may challenge how others see themselves. Instead of addressing that internal discomfort, some people unconsciously try to pull you back into your old role. They may dismiss your progress, question your decisions, or make you feel like you're doing too much, all in an attempt to restore the balance they were comfortable with. No one fell too far ahead or too far behind. But as you begin to move forward, that balance shifts. Without intending to, you create a contrast between where you are and where others are. For someone who is already unsure of themselves, this contrast when your growth is rooted in self-improvement rather than comparison, it becomes easier to navigate the reactions of others with grace. People celebrate you until you surpass them, and this is one of the more difficult realities of growth to accept. In the early stages of your journey, support often comes easily. When you are just starting out, your progress feels non-threatening. People are comfortable encouraging you because your growth does not disrupt their position or sense of identity. They may cheer you on, offer advice, and express pride in your efforts. At this stage, your journey is seen as positive and inspiring, something they can support without hesitation. However, as you continue to grow and begin to reach levels that go beyond what others expected, the dynamic can change. What was once encouragement may turn into silence. What was once enthusiasm may become indifferent. This shift often happens gradually, making it difficult to pinpoint exactly when things change. But the underlying reason is often tied to comparison and perceived competition. When your progress starts to exceed that of those around you, it can create a sense of imbalance that not everyone is comfortable with. Surpassing others does not have to be intentional for it to have an impact. You may simply be focused on your own path, working toward your own goals without any desire to compete. But in environments where comparison is common, your growth can still be interpreted as a form of competition. People may begin to measure themselves against you, consciously or unconsciously. If they feel like they are falling behind, it can affect how they perceive your success. Instead of seeing it as something to celebrate, they may start to see it as something that highlights their own shortcomings. This shift can lead to a withdrawal of support. People who once celebrated your milestones may become less vocal or less engaged. They might stop acknowledging your achievements or respond with less enthusiasm. In some cases, they may even become critical, pointing out flaws or suggesting that you are moving too fast or aiming too high. These reactions can be confusing, especially if they come from people who were previously supportive. It can make you question whether you did something wrong when in reality, the change is rooted in how your growth is being perceived. There is also an emotional aspect to surpassing others. For some people, your success can feel like a loss of connection or equality. If they were used to being in a similar position as you, your advancement can create a sense of distance. They may feel like they can no longer relate to you in the same way, or that the balance in the relationship has shifted. This can lead to discomfort, which may be expressed through subtle changes in behavior or attitude. In certain cases, surpassing others can expose underlying competition that was never openly acknowledged. A relationship that seemed supportive may reveal elements of rivalry when one person begins to advance more rapidly. This can be particularly challenging because it changes the nature of the relationship in ways that are not always discussed openly. You may sense the shift, but not have clear communication about it. Navigating this requires a strong sense of self and a clear understanding of your intentions. If your focus remains on your own growth rather than comparison, it becomes easier to stay grounded despite these changes. It's also important to recognize that not everyone will react negatively when you surpass them. There are people who will continue to support you genuinely, regardless of how far you go. These individuals are secure in themselves and do not see your success as a threat. Instead, they see it as something to celebrate and learn from. They understand that your journey is separate from theirs and that your growth does not diminish their own potential. These are the relationships that become even more valuable as you continue to evolve. Navigating the reality that support can change as you grow requires emotional resilience. You may need to adjust your expectations and accept that not all encouragement is unconditional. This does not mean becoming cynical or closed off, but rather becoming more discerning about where you seek validation. Instead of relying on others' reactions to measure your progress, you learn to find fulfillment in your own growth and in the alignment with your values and goals. At its core, this experience teaches you an important lesson about independence. Your journey cannot be dependent on constant approval or applause. There will be moments when you are celebrated and moments when you are not. There will be people who support you consistently and others whose support fades over time. Through it all, your responsibility is to remain committed to your path, to continue growing with sincerity, and to maintain a sense of humility and gratitude regardless of how others respond.